Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is not just another talk. This is a wake-up call, a shift, a challenge, a moment where we stop running, stop pretending, and start becoming. Because far too many men are living behind walls, strong on the outside, silent on the inside. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they've been taught to fear what they feel, to hide what hurts, and to run from what matters most. Real connection. But what if I told you that even the most avoided hearts could learn to love deeply? That even the most distant souls could become secure, present, and powerful in their relationships? Tonight, we're going to unlock the truth behind that transformation. And I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to ignite something in you. Because you were never created to live in emotional survival mode. You were made to rise. So if you're ready to stop avoiding and start becoming, if you're ready to trade fear for freedom, then lean in, because these 5 strategies aren't just tips, they're a roadmap to change everything. Let's dive in. There's a moment in every man's life when he comes face to face with fear, not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers. It's subtle. It says, don't get too close. Don't let her in. Don't let them see who you really are. It creeps in through past wounds, childhood patterns, and the pain of rejection. It becomes a voice so familiar that you begin to believe it's your own. The truth is, fear isn't always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it shows up in silence. In the moments you pull away from a conversation that gets too deep. In the excuses you make when commitment feels like a trap. In the habit of disappearing emotionally when things start to get real. Avoidant behavior often masquerades as strength, independence, or emotional control. But the reality is, it's fear in disguise. It's fear of being known and then rejected. Fear of not measuring up. Fear of losing control. And the more that fear is fed with isolation, with defensiveness, with shutting down, the stronger it becomes. Every time you avoid the high conversation, the difficult emotion, or the uncomfortable truth, you reinforce the belief that fear is your protector. Facing it doesn't mean it disappears overnight. It means you stop running from it. You call it what it is. You stare it in the face and say, I see you, but you don't get to run my life anymore. It takes courage to feel what you've numbed for years. It takes strength to sit in the discomfort of uncertainty without needing to shut it down. And it takes boldness to risk being misunderstood or hurt just to be real. But here's what happens when you stop feeding fear. It shrinks. It doesn't vanish entirely, but it loses its grip. But fear isn't protecting you, it's preventing you. It's keeping you from connection, from peace, from the kind of love that doesn't just feel good, but helps you grow. To face fear, you have to first recognize it. You have to slow down and listen to the thoughts behind your reactions. When she texts and you don't reply for hours, not because you're busy, but because you're unsure how to respond, that's fear. When you convince yourself it's better to be alone than to risk being hurt, that's fear. When you tell yourself you don't care just to avoid feeling vulnerable, that's fear. The more you show up despite the fear, the more you train your mind and heart to believe, I can handle this. I don't have to escape. You don't have to be fearless to grow. You just need to be willing. Willing to stay in the conversation 1 minute longer. Willing to express one honest thought instead of hiding behind sarcasm or silence. Willing to say, I'm afraid, instead of pretending everything's fine. Every time you choose to face the fear instead of feeding it, you take back a little more ground. You step out of survival mode and into secure living. It's not about becoming someone else. So instead of learning how to speak their feelings, they learn how to suppress them. But here's the reality. Just because you don't speak the language doesn't mean the emotions aren't there. They still show up. They show up in anger, silence, withdrawal, distraction, even sarcasm. Emotions don't disappear because you ignore them. They find other ways to be heard. The problem is when you can't name what you're feeling, you can't manage it. And if you can't manage it, you end up reacting instead of responding. You end up hurting the people you care about. It's about becoming more of who you truly are, unfiltered, unafraid, and unshaken by the shadows that used to own you. Many men grow up fluent in the language of logic, action, and control. They're taught how to problem solve, how to stay composed, how to push through pain without showing weakness. But rarely are they taught how to name what they feel. Somewhere along the line, emotion became something foreign, even forbidden. They learned that crying was a sign of softness, that admitting hurt was a kind of failure, and that vulnerability was dangerous. Not because you mean to, but because you don't have the tools to do it any differently. Learning the language of emotion is not about becoming emotional. It's about becoming emotionally literate. It's learning how to translate that tightness in your chest into words. It's understanding that irritation is often unspoken sadness, that shutting down might be a sign of fear, not indifference, that what looks like confidence could be insecurity in disguise. When you begin to identify emotions for what they are, you gain the power to process them rather than be ruled by them. It starts simple. Ask yourself in quiet moments, what am I actually feeling right now? Not just I'm fine or I'm frustrated, but deeper than that. Are you feeling overwhelmed, rejected, lonely, embarrassed? Are you feeling joy but afraid to express it? Emotions come in layers, and the more you practice peeling them back, the more fluent you become. Over time, you learn to catch them before they explode or fade into silence. You learn to bring them into relationships without fear of judgment. Emotion doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. When you can say to someone that really hurt me, or I'm scared to lose you, or even I feel disconnected and I don't know how to fix it, something powerful happens. You create space for real connection. You invite honesty. You make room for healing. Emotional language is the bridge between two hearts. And without it, even the strongest relationships fall apart. It's also important to understand that learning this language takes time. If you've spent years avoiding emotions, it's not going to feel natural first. It might even feel uncomfortable, awkward, or pointless. Maybe it was a father who wasn't present, or a mother who gave love, but only when you performed. Maybe it was a heartbreak that shattered trust, or a moment of vulnerability that was met with rejection or shame. Whatever the origin, a belief took root that closeness is dangerous, that needing someone makes you weak, that love always leads to pain. These stories are not just memories, they become scripts. Scripts that play out in how you act, how you withdraw when things get intense, how you overthink a simple text, how you tell yourself you don't care, just to feel in control. But every time you speak one honest feeling out loud, you're retraining your heart and mind. You're breaking old patterns and building new ones. And each step counts. There's no medal for being the most emotionally shut down person in the room. There's no trophy for keeping everything bottled up. The real strength is found in the man who knows himself, the one who can feel deeply without being consumed by it, the one who can say, I'm angry, and also know whether that anger comes from hurt, fear, or injustice. That kind of awareness doesn't just help you in relationships. It helps you lead, love, and live with integrity. Emotion is not the enemy. It's a signal. It tells you what matters. It reveals what's unresolved. It helps you understand what's worth fighting for and what needs healing. When you learn the language of emotion, you don't just become a better communicator. You become a better man. Every person carries a story. Sometimes it's spoken out loud, but most of the time it lives silently in the background, shaping how they see the world, how they see themselves, and how they show up in relationships. For many avoidant men, that story started early. The problem isn't that you have a story. The problem is when you forget that it can be rewritten. The past may explain your pain, but it doesn't have to dictate your future. You are not locked into being avoidant, guarded, or emotionally distant forever. The first step in rewriting the story is recognizing the one you're living in. If you believe you're unlovable, you'll find reasons to confirm it, even when someone genuinely cares for you. If you believe you'll always be abandoned, you might push people away before they have the chance to leave. If you believe emotional intimacy is a trap, you'll sabotage connection the moment it starts to feel real. The story you tell yourself becomes the lens through which you interpret everything. That's why awareness matters. You have to pause long enough to ask, what am I believing right now? And is that belief actually true or just familiar? Rewriting the story doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means choosing a different meaning for it. Maybe your dad left, but that doesn't mean you're unworthy of being chosen. Maybe you were betrayed, But that doesn't mean you can never trust again. Maybe you felt unseen, but that doesn't mean you're invisible. The pain was real, but it doesn't get to have the final word. You get to decide what story you want to live by now. Start by naming the story you've carried. Write it down if you have to, then challenge it. Speak truth over it. Replace "I'm better off alone" with "I'm learning to be open, even if it scares me." Replace "I don't need anyone" with "It's okay to want connection." Replace "I always mess things up" with "I'm growing and that takes time." These aren't affirmations to make you feel good for 5 minutes. These are the building blocks of a new identity. They help you see yourself not as a product of pain, but as a person in process. It's also important to surround yourself with people who reinforce your new story. If you're trying to grow but keep engaging with people who expect the old version of you, it's easy to fall back. Growth thrives in safe environments. People who give you space to evolve, who don't shame you for changing, who remind you that you don't have to stay stuck in a version of yourself that no longer fits. Rewriting your story takes work. It requires repetition, reflection, and a lot of grace. Sometimes you'll slip back into the old script without even realizing it. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be aware, to catch yourself sooner, to choose differently next time. Because with every new thought, every new word, every new action rooted in truth instead of fear, you're rewriting the story. Not for others to approve, but for you to live free. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. For many men, the idea of opening up feels like handing someone a weapon and hoping they don't use it. It feels risky, unsafe, even weak. So instead, silence becomes the shield. Humor becomes the deflection. Control becomes a defense. But underneath all of that, there's still a longing to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted for who you really are, not just the version you've polished to survive. Real vulnerability is not about spilling your deepest secrets to anyone who will listen. It's not about performing emotion or forcing connection. It's about being honest, intentional, and real. It's choosing to share parts of yourself with the right people in the right moments for the right reasons. And that kind of vulnerability takes far more strength than keeping everything locked inside. You don't have to share your entire life story to be vulnerable. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "I'm not okay today," or admitting that conversation really shook me, or asking, "Can we talk about what I'm feeling right now?" These small moments of openness are where trust begins. They're where connection deepens. They're where you stop performing and start living. It's natural to feel discomfort at first. Vulnerability goes against everything society taught many men about masculinity. You were told to be the strong one, the fixer, the calm in the chaos. But nobody ever said you're allowed to be the storm too. You were never given permission to feel confused, lost, scared, or heartbroken. So now, when those emotions rise, it feels easier to shut down than to speak up. But the truth is, vulnerability isn't about being emotional. It's about being honest. It's about showing up as you are, not just when you're at your best, but also when you're in process. When you stop pretending to have it all together, you give others permission to do the same. And that's where the real power lies. Not in perfection, but in presence. Look for those who listen without trying to fix, who honor your words instead of using them against you. These are the safe spaces where your vulnerability can breathe and grow. If you've been burned before, it might take time to open up again, but it's worth it. The right connection will never make you regret being real. There will be times when vulnerability feels like too much, when the fear of being misunderstood or judged creeps in. That's normal, but don't let that fear silence you. Each time you choose to be open, you strengthen your emotional muscles. To practice vulnerability with purpose, you have to first understand your why. Why are you sharing? Are you looking for support, clarity, connection, or are you hoping someone else will fix what's broken inside? Vulnerability is powerful, but when it's misused, it can lead to disappointment or misunderstanding. When it's rooted in authenticity and not desperation, it becomes a tool for transformation. You also have to choose your people wisely. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Trust is built, not given away blindly. To become more resilient, not less. You gain clarity about who you are, what you need, and what matters to you. Vulnerability is not a destination, it's a practice, a way of being, a choice you make over and over again. To take off the mask, to speak the truth, to risk being seen. And though it may feel uncomfortable, the growth it brings is unmatched. Every time you choose to show up fully, you're not just changing the way others see you, you're changing the way you see yourself. It doesn't expect you to become a different person overnight. It just invites you to take the next step. For men who've lived most of their lives avoiding deep connection, the journey towards security won't be linear. There will be moments when you feel like you're making progress, being more open, more honest, more grounded, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, the old habits show up. You shut down, you pull away, you overthink. And in those moments, the voice of perfection will try to tell you, see, you haven't changed at all. But that voice is lying, because even the awareness that something needs to change is proof of growth. You stop withdrawing just because you don't have the perfect thing to say. You begin to engage imperfectly maybe, but sincerely. And that sincerity builds trust. It builds confidence, it builds connection. People don't connect to perfection, they connect to presence, to effort, to honesty. Committing to growth also means being patient with yourself. You're not just learning new behaviors, you're unlearning years of emotional survival. You're rewiring thoughts, reshaping responses, and stretching into a version of yourself that feels unfamiliar. The truth is, nobody heals in a straight line. Nobody breaks old patterns without sometimes falling back into them. What matters is how quickly you catch yourself, how willing you are to reflect and redirect. Growth doesn't erase your past, it reclaims it. It gives new meaning to your mistakes. It turns failures into lessons and delays into training grounds. It changes your mindset from, I have to get this right, to, I'm willing to get better. When you stop chasing perfection, you free yourself from the fear of failure. You stop avoiding important conversations just because you might stumble over your words. It's uncomfortable at times because growth always comes with tension. But that tension is a sign that something new is happening inside you. Every step you take toward growth counts. The time you pause to reflect instead of reacting, the moment you ask a question instead of making an assumption, the choice to stay and talk it out instead of walking away. These are victories. And they deserve to be celebrated. Not just the big moments, but the small ones too. Because it's in those small, consistent choices that lasting change is built. The more you embrace growth, the more you realize you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to have it all figured out to be respected. You don't have to hide your flaws to be worthy of connection. You're allowed to be a work in progress and still be valuable. You're allowed to show up with questions instead of answers, with effort instead of expertise. This kind of mindset doesn't just transform how you see yourself, it transforms how you show up in every relationship. You become more compassionate, more patient, more real. And that kind of presence, rooted in growth, not perfection, is exactly what this world needs more of. So here's the truth. You are not broken. You are becoming. And no matter how long you've lived with the fear of closeness, with the weight of old stories, with the silence of emotions never spoken, there is more for you, more strength, more freedom, more love. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be willing to face the fear instead of feeding it, to speak the language your heart has been aching to learn, to rewrite the narrative that once told you to hide, to practice being seen even when it feels unsafe, and above all, to commit, not to some flawless ideal, but to becoming the strongest, most honest version of yourself. You are not here by accident. You are not hearing this by chance. This is your moment, right here, right now, to rise, to grow, to lead yourself out of hiding and into healing. One decision, one conversation, one vulnerable step at a time. because the world doesn't need another man pretending to have it all together. It needs more men who are real, awake, and willing to fight for who they are becoming. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening, and thank you for choosing growth over comfort, because it matters more than you know. Your journey has already begun. Thank you. Perfection is a heavy burden. It whispers that you have to get everything right every time or you're failing. It tells you that if you slip up, you're starting over. That one mistake defines you. That vulnerability isn't enough. You have to be flawless too. And that kind of thinking keeps men stuck. It doesn't encourage growth. It paralyzes it. It doesn't lead to connection. It builds walls of shame, guilt, and pressure. Growth, on the other hand, gives you room to breathe. Growth says, you're not where you want to be yet, but you're not where you used to be either. It makes space for the in-between, for the try-again moments, for the days when you're still learning how to be open, present, and emotionally secure.